Hey everybody, it's Dr. Sarah Andreas, and today I want to talk to you about leadership development as a strategic initiative. So we're going to talk about the potential costs, the essentials to leadership development, a quick way to assess your organization's culture, how to identify potential leaders, and 3 things that you can do tomorrow to invest in leadership development. So let's first start talking about a strategic initiative. Whenever we call something a strategic initiative, that means that we're going to have a plan that has resources and a champion and support of all the leaders in the organization. Without that emphasis on your leadership development, then nobody's really in charge of it, nobody really manages it or pays attention to it. So the chances of that becoming a part of your business culture and things that are important to you really go down if you don't make it a strategic initiative. We're all familiar with the costs that could be included in developing and providing leadership development. Time, money, coaching, mentors, books, classes, both formal and informal, they all cost something. However, I want to talk to you about the potential cost of not providing leadership development. I think there's a huge cost in turnover. We all know the saying, people leave managers, not companies. There's also the cost of unclear communication and a cost of being a lack of vision. But one of the things that I'd love to encourage you to think about is the opportunity cost related to not providing leadership development inside your organization. So, what are the opportunity costs that your business is paying currently? You might be losing great ideas because your current leadership team is not skilled in leadership. They're primarily managers, which is okay, but without that emphasis on leadership, you might be missing vision ideas, things that can take your organization to the next level. You might be missing opportunities for engagement with different suppliers or different interns or whatever it is that brings in new ideas to your organization. So I'd love you to just jot down a couple thoughts, because I'm sure as we're talking about this, you've like, oh my gosh, I can see that we are missing X, Y, and Z in our organization by not focusing on making our leadership stronger inside. All right, so let's talk about the 5 essentials to leadership development. Analyzing your culture is so important when you're thinking about leadership and leadership development. Is your culture supportive to emerging leaders? And this is why I ask this. If your culture, when somebody makes a mistake, they are harshly reprimanded, or they feel like they're going to be fired, or they have negative feelings around making a mistake, then chances are you don't have a culture that's supportive of learning and development. We all know that when we're learning something new, we're going to make mistakes. And it's important to recognize that and to make it an okay culture where if you make a mistake, own up to it, let's fix it and move on, not let's punish you, maybe fire you, and I don't want to ever talk to you again kind of a culture. If your culture is not inducive of people making mistakes and owning them and fixing them, then the chances are there's somebody in your organization making a mistake and they're not owning up to it. And if you have one person making a mistake, there are probably other people making the very same mistake, but because nobody has owned up to it, you have broken processes and procedures inside your organization that need to be fixed in order for you to really see success inside your organization. The second question is, what type of leaders will you produce? If you have an organization which is eat or be eaten, the chances of you producing servant leaders is really low, because the eat or be eaten is a very competitive environment. And I'm not saying either one is right or wrong. Very competitive environments can be great places if it's where people thrive and enjoy working. But you have to understand what kind of environment you have, because that environment predicts the type of leaders that you are going to produce. So if you think that you want to produce more servant leaders in your organization, you might need to look at what your current culture is. And then, are your current leaders effective? When we think about if our current leaders are effective, we're thinking, do they care about the people? Do they care about the business? Are they able to get things done? Are they accomplishing things? Do we have a track record of success inside of our organization? And here's why that's so important. Leadership is often learned by watching other leaders. So if your current leadership team is effective and they're getting things done, then you have a better chance of producing leaders who are effective and are getting things done. But if you have a culture full of grumpy, grouchy leaders, then the chances of you really getting happy and excited leaders is really slim, because they model themselves after their current leadership team. Now I'd like to talk to you about areas of leadership development and things that you can do in order to bring this into your organization. So I want you to think about complete exposure, select investment, pruning, and nurturing. I think those 4 areas can really help you identify and really nurture leaders inside of your organization. So when I'm thinking about complete exposure, I think about every single person who works in your organization. They should be exposed to leadership skills, whether they're a leader or they're just the janitor. We should be exposing them to communication skills, responsibility, dependability, leadership skills, all of that kind of stuff, self-awareness, in order to raise their level. If we think that our organization is only as strong as its weakest link, you want to make sure that your weakest link is super strong. And that comes by educating people and exposing them to ideas and thoughts that they might not have had on their own. So some ways that you can do that is work on your personal leadership and encourage your peers to do the same. Your leadership abilities and levels will affect everybody inside the organization. If you're the top person in your organization, you have so much influence in how the rest of the organization is going to function. If you're the top person inside of your department, you have so much influence on how the people inside of your department are going to function. And if you're focused on developing leaders inside of your organization and not followers, just think about how amazing that would be if you had a department full of people who thought and acted like leaders. Then I want you to talk about leadership lessons and leadership all the time. One of the things that we can do is be talking to people, share lessons that you've learned, share things that you helped you get to become a leader and where you are today with people. Those stories can help cement the idea that leadership is important. Have a recommended book list that you share with everybody. And here's the thing, libraries are still available. So you could share this list, encourage them to go to the library, and it doesn't cost anything. But they could be exposed to the same books that you're reading and have conversations around that. Have a list of recommended TED Talks or YouTube videos that you can share with everyone. If your company has core values, make sure you know them, live them, and share them. Often core values are the decisions that you make before there's a hardship inside the organization. So if one of your core values is honesty, then you have made the decision already to be honest in all of your transactions, whether it costs the company some money or not. That's one of your core values. So you want to make sure that you are always ingraining them in everybody inside of your organization. And then I'd love to encourage you, do some type of development for everybody in your organization. I personally think that doing the DISC assessment in class for everybody is so good. It helps people with communication skills. And as we know, the better we communicate, the less issues we have inside the organization. So anytime that you can do a class or do some type of activity for everyone, even if it's just once a year, where everybody's hearing the same message, they're experiencing it, and then they're taking that, it does several things for you. It builds value, that you value them as individuals and you want them to become better. It also helps with communication skills inside of the organization. When everybody's hearing the same message, no matter what that message is, when everybody hears the same thing, it gives them place of to be able to start conversations on their own. So I encourage you, if you can, do that type of investment at least once a year where you're getting everybody together and talking about stuff. I always think about it as like rain and fertilizer. When you have rain and fertilizer and you spread it over an entire field, you have growth that's happening all across your company, not in just one specific area. So how to identify potential leaders inside of your organization and the people that you're going to invest in. First of all, select investment I think is so important. If you are doing that overarching initiative where you're exposing everybody to leadership development, you're going to see people start to raise their hand and you're going to be like, oh yeah, we need to invest more in that person. So here's what I recommend. I recommend you invest in your current leadership team. Your employees will never do better than your current leadership team. So if you want to make a huge impact, investing in your current leaders can do that for you. Then I think you need to look at people who are raising their hands. Anybody who's raising their hand inside your organization may be a good investment for you. And then I'd also like to encourage you to think about the people who should be raising their hands but are not. And here's why I think that's important. Early in my career, I was filling in. I worked at a Taco Bell, so I was filling in as a supervisor because one of the supervisors had gotten a promotion. I was doing the work. I was making sure that we got the food ready, the cash drawers counted down, that people were doing what they were supposed to be doing. But when the role became open, I didn't apply for the job. And my general manager brought me in the office and said, Sarah, why aren't you applying for this role? You're already doing it. And I said, well, I don't see myself as a supervisor or a leader. I was just doing the work because it needed to be done. And I think so many times we have people in our organization who are doing the work but never see themselves that way. But if you can plant the seed that they have the potential, that they should be raising their hand, then you have an opportunity to help develop somebody that may not have saw themselves in that light, but because you do, you've impacted their life for the rest of their life. So what should you look for? And I love this quote by Warren Buffett. He basically says you should look for intelligence, energy, and integrity. And the quote is, if you don't have the first, the other two will kill you. If you hire somebody without integrity, you want them to be really dumb and lazy. And think about that. If they're intelligent, have a lot of energy, but don't have integrity, then they're going to kill your organization because they'll do things that are a little bit shady and a little bit on the gray line because they think they can get away with it. But if we have people who are intelligent, who have energy, and who have integrity, think of the amazing results that we can get by helping those people develop and grow their skills even more. So what should you look for in leadership potential candidates? I think you need to look for a problem seer and a problem fixer. Oftentimes we have people who can see the problems but don't do anything to fix it. Or we have people who are willing to fix it, but they can't ever see the problem. So if we can find somebody who can both see the problem and figure out how to fix it, that is amazing. Then you also need to identify people who care about people without getting in the mix. And what I mean by that is oftentimes if people care about people so much that they're willing to let business and quality slip because they're caring about people, that's not healthy. We need people who can be relatable, who can have influence, but still hold people accountable for getting things done the right way. And then they have to care about the business and the results. The reality is, if the business doesn't thrive and get results, there's no business left to support everybody who works there. So we need to help people develop their business acumen and their awareness of business and how to be strategic and how to look at a financial statement, but also how to care about the people who are inside of that organization. As you're thinking about people to develop, I encourage you to have some type of purposeful barrier. A purposeful barrier could be an application that they have to fill out in order to participate in additional training. It could be an interview that they have to do with you, sharing how they are going to use what they're learning and put it into practice inside of your organization. The reason this barrier is so important, it gives people a sense of accomplishment when they get chosen to be a part of that program or chosen to take educational classes outside of the organization. So I encourage you just to think about something really simple. Doesn't have to be complicated, but there needs to be some type of barrier that allows them to feel that sense of achievement when they're selected. Your investment's going to be classes, possibly. Your time is the most valuable thing you can give. If you're a senior leader inside of your organization, you taking the time to share your knowledge, your experiences, your thoughts on leadership with an emerging leader or with other leaders inside of your organization is huge, because you're influencing the way they think about leadership and the way they think about the company. Mentoring and coaching. Mentoring I view as a long-term relationship where somebody is investing years of their time in an individual, helping them grow and see things differently. Coaching, you might just bring in a coach, external or internal, for specific areas that the individual needs to work on in order to grow and develop. Project opportunities. This might be one of my favorite things to do in order to give individuals exposure to leadership positions. The way I usually do it is the first time they work on a project, they're just a project member. They're a team member who gets to work with everybody else on the team, and they go through that process. The second time they get to be the assistant or the project lead assistant, however you want to call them, but basically there's still somebody above them, helping them, guiding them through the process, helping them understand how to manage a project, how to talk to people who do not directly report to you, so they really don't have to listen. That helps you gain your influential skills. And then after they've successfully done that a couple times, then give them the opportunity to lead a project on their own. And you might be thinking, hey, I don't have projects in my organization. Well, you should. You should have a whole list of things that would get your company to the next level. And as you have people who you identify to serve on project teams, give them opportunities. Number one, it cross-pollinates your company. So you should have teams working together who are not necessarily from the same department or area. Number two, it helps you guys move faster. If you have a vision of where you want your company to go as the leader, and you take that vision and you put it into projects where people are working on them throughout the year for you, just think where you would be if you got 3 projects done by the end of the year that moved you closer to your big goal and big challenges that you want to address. Send them to conferences and give them continuing education assistance. The reason I encourage conferences or other type of external education is we can get stuck inside of our own organization and never see things differently. And by exposing them to other businesses, other people, other ways of thinking, we can maybe expand the capabilities they have, and the way they think about projects and problems will be different because they've had influence and they heard somebody else say, hey, we did it this way. They'll be like, oh, we should try that. So I always encourage some type of external education as well as whatever you're doing internally. Prune fast. And pruning and weeding, or however you want to view this, I think this is so important. Think about in a garden, if you have a weed that's only an inch tall and you pull it, it doesn't do very much damage when you pull it out, right? But what happens when you let the weed get 3 feet tall and you start to pull it out? It damages the ground around it and the plants around it. Well, the same thing happens in our organizations. If you know somebody is not a good fit, so maybe they're not a good fit in the role that they're in, but they have a great attitude and great work ethic, maybe you find an opportunity for them somewhere else in the business. But if they don't have a great attitude and they're not a good fit and they're not getting results, then the longer you leave them inside of that role, the more damage they will do when you pull them out. So just keep that in mind as you're going through and you're trying to develop leaders. You also have to be aware of people who are harming your culture and people who are not helping you get to your next level. And then I just encourage you to nurture. Nurture everybody who's in your sphere of influence. That means the people who work for you, your subcontractors, your suppliers. Encourage people, help them feel connected. That's one of the most important things that I believe you can do as a leader is grow future leaders. The way you do that is you encourage people and you help them see the possibilities that they have and what they can offer. So what should you do with everything I just shared with you today? Well, it's totally up to you, but here's what I can tell you. If you put something in place today, even if it's tiny, even if it's just a book list and a YouTube list that you share with everybody in your organization, it starts planting the seeds for the expectation for people to grow and develop. Your company right now, if you would not change one thing over the next year, what would happen? You would start to deteriorate, right? There's always something that you need to fix, that you need to change, that you need to grow. Well, the same thing with us as individuals inside of organizations. We need to grow and develop. So I'd love to encourage you. Find at least one thing that I've talked about today and put it into place, even if it's tiny. It'll make such a difference for you. And if you keep building, every month you add something new, or every quarter you add something new that you're doing to help your people grow and develop, you're going to see great results. All right, you guys, I'll talk to you next week.